Hello guys, this is Ovidius, and a couple of months ago I made a video called How to Make Your Guitar Part Groovy in 5 Steps, where I kind of explain how I go about coming up with interesting guitar arrangements. The problem was that I didn't really give you enough of musical context. Yes, we worked on a chord progression that I came up with, but it wasn't really an actual song. So a few days ago I actually had a gig. It was the first gig I played in months, and while performing I realized, why don't I just show you guys how I play one of those songs with that project? It is a covers gig, and I play acoustic guitar and have one vocalist singing. So I thought it's perfect because that's where I actually apply all the principles explained in that video. So today I'm going to be showing you one of the songs that I play with that project, and it's called Hit the Road Jack by Ray Charles. So let's dive into it. Alright, so the first thing you need in every song, and I've spoken this a few times in my videos, is dynamics. And we're going to start with that. And this song is relatively simple because we have verse, chorus kind of situation. At least in my arrangement, that's what I do in an acoustic environment. So let's just break down the chords. So the chords are A minor, G, F major, and E major. And you can just play them as they are, using most of the open shapes. But since we're talking about dynamics, I tend to move to a bar positions because that's where I have more control. And dynamics kind of mean control of the volume, right? So kind of move to A minor position right here, and G position bar as well, and F, we usually do that anyway, and an E open, of course. And I kind of just go. Now, the next thing I want to kind of think about is what do I do in the verses versus what I do in the choruses, because we need to make that transition very obvious, right? And this is where comes the bass guitar / guitar, regular guitar playing, where I kind of break it apart. Because we have such a significant and memorable bass line, which is just going down. I tend to kind of use that as my staple bass line, both in the verses and the choruses. But in the verses, I actually just stick with that. So I would just go. So to add a little bit more life to this, I tend to use quite a lot of palm muting in the verses, so because it gives a bit more mysterious kind of sound, kind of boosts the low end a little bit sometimes, just feels like it's a bit beefier than it actually is. And also I tend to add a little percussive element to it, which I talked about in the previous video as well, but in this particular situation, what I do is I kind of so what I do is I accent 2s and 4s, beat number 2 and beat number 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And what it means is that I actually hit the string, and also I try to hit other strings that are muted at the same time. So kind of get a percussive chuck. Into my part. So that gives even more kind of groove, and like almost feels like there's a drum going on in the background, like where the snare would come really. So what we have so far is the verse section, right? So what happens in the chorus, what I do is I still keep that bass line going, you know, but I add the chords because this is a bigger section. We need a bit more volume and more power, right? So what I do is I kind of separate the chord and the bass and the low root note. So I would go. Right, so what I do is I play the bass note and then I do the rest of the chord. Usually I tend to aim for the top 4 strings, really, unless I decide to do this kind of over the fretboard type of shape, which I kind of tend to use quite a lot. But yeah, it also works. It can be just the middle 3 strings, like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, or it could be also the 1st. So I just separate the low end from the high end. And even if I hit the lower 2 strings, so the 6th and 5th, that's absolutely fine. It kind of gives a bit more oomph to it. Another thing with that separating bass and the chords is that the chords come on 2s and 4s. So that kind of snare imitation kind of carries on throughout the chorus, which kind of works quite consistently with the verses, which is a good thing. Another thing that you could add also is little stops and stabs. So what I tend to do in verses, so for instance, when I just at the very end of the verse, I would add a little stop on the F and a long E major chord, just to signify that the chorus is coming. So let's just try that again. Again. So these kind of stops work like a drum fill or like a stab that you would do in a real band situation as well. So it's a great musical kind of concept and idea to use when you're just playing on your own, just to signify that change from one section to the other. So one more last thing that I would probably add to this kind of a guitar arrangement, especially when the song is kind of like repetitive four chord loop, is to add variations, and it can be rhythmic variations, it could be harmonic variations, it could be bass line changes. In the chorus, when you have that louder section, so you can always add little variations in the chords, like the way you play them. So for instance, so what I just did is basically, so did like a little extra note before the main stab, which is on the beat. So 3 and on the beat 4, or 1 and on the beat 2. So the second time around what I did was, so 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Right, so that kind of adds a little bit more life to it. So these are the kind of ideas I wanted to share with you guys. So I hope this was helpful. It was more of a practical, more musical kind of a context this time. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a like and a comment. And if you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe, because there's going to be more stuff coming up in the coming weeks, months. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.